Oh, man, they racing in here, man. They getting in here. Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone to HBCU Coaches Corner, where I'm your host, Rocky Miller, along with my co-host, the Rattler, the winner of his first Division I game this season, none other than Mr. Stephen Campbell. And the man you all came to see, the SWAC Championship coach, the SWAC Coach of the Year, the SIAC Coach of the Year, the man who in the only offensive coordinator to ever coordinate a HBCU championship team that won a PWI conference. None other than my man, Johnnie Cole.
Man, when I think about this day and knowing what happened to the Southern coach, I've been there, and some people got to understand in our business, in this business of coaching football, I've been on both sides of the tables. It's some to get hired and some to get fired. So, it's not a very good day. I hate to see any coach, especially one of our fellow HBCU coaches, get the hatch, but that's part of the business. And you just got to move on and keep your eyes open and hopefully maybe he could jump on some other staff or maybe get another job. So kind of want to open that up because that's been the big news in HBCU sports. And, one of the reasons why I opened up this show was to expose coaches to the greatness that they have. But I just want our viewers to know, man, it ain't that nobody is a bad person. It ain't personal. It was just a decision that people made. Ain't nothing that he did or done or wasn't doing. It was about football. It's about football. So I just wanted to make sure because a lot of times you guys, coaches get fired and everybody, they want to go in the corner and he was riding fast down the street. He was messing with this person. Hey man, that's the personal side. Then there's a football side. And fortunately, in football, in college sports, pro sports, there's always somebody getting hired and there's always somebody getting fired. So I wish Terrence good luck, him and his family. He's a good guy and he's well known around the HBCU space.
Coach, this has been a interesting season thus far, and I actually find Coach Graves' tenure as Southern head coach quite interesting. He won the West Championship last year,
right?
The West Division championship, West Division title. And this year he came in and struggled early, and I think they're 1-6 now. Is that correct, Campbell?
Yeah, and I'm gonna let you go, but I want to piggyback on that. So
they're 1-6.
1-6.
And this is the kind of my frustration as just a man is it had really nothing to do with Terrence Graves. I don't know Terrence Graves. He's not a personal friend or anything like this. But had Terrence, this is what I mean, had he struggled out the gate and then come back his second season and win the West, he may still have a job, Coach. But because he did so well his first year, there were expectations where they were ranked the number 2 ranked team in HBCU football, where they were in the top 5 coming into this season. Do you think Terrence Graves was ultimately a victim of his own success in that coming out the gate, he wins the West title, and then he follows that up with a disappointing season?
No, I mean, one thing you got to look behind the way he was hired. why he was hired and the way he was hired. It was a money thing. We got to get somebody in there because you don't usually get rid of coach and then hire one of the assistants on. You don't get rid of coach for a bad record. After Dooley didn't do well, and then you hire one of the assistants on the staff. So that's one thing in question. Number two, what about Southern? Is Southern is a place to pick coaches that you got that's learning how to be a head coach? You know what I mean? Is Southern a blue bread program that they want to go get a championship coach instead of a coach that's going to learn on the job, learning to be a head coach on the job, and that's what they chose. And it's almost like, man, I'm afraid to say, and it's funny. Hell, if you win the West, you out of a job the next year if you don't win the West again. I mean, that happened now to Terrence. That happened to Bubba. That happened basically to Dooley.
Yeah, it happened to Dooley, yes.
Happened to Dooley. Happened to me. I won a championship and out of a job the next year. I mean, behooves me that I don't know. Is this a trend? Is it? I don't know. That's a good question. But I think when you put in those situations, man, you got to try to please everybody. I don't think it's Southern. They can't afford to go 1-6. I think it's the worst record since 1971 in the 70s, Bishop.
That's correct.
And Southern is they struggling financially as well. You know what I mean? So those games mean a whole bunch, because when people stop coming, you stop making money. And so, that has some things to do with it as well.
Let me ask you this, Coach, and I'll let you go after this, Campbell. You bring up something very interesting, Coach. Dooley won in his first year at Southern, fired his second year. Bubba won in his first year at Prairie View, fired his second year. Terrence won in his first year at Southern, fired his second year. Let me ask, I guess I'll ask Campbell this as an HBCU historian, right? Does this early success put pressure on coaches where they are measured against their own first year performance to where they're not really looking at that it's a second year program? They're looking at that you won a championship, a title in your first year, and you're looking to improve on that.
Well, I'm going to look at it, and I want to hear Coach's opinion on this. All things are not the same, even though they look the same. And I'm going to use Terrence Graves. You look at, they did win the West, but we know in our heart and minds, it was 3 games they probably should have lost last year. You did not see the progression of the team getting better. You saw wins, and again, a win is a win, but I'm talking about when every week you see that team getting a little bit better, a little bit better. You saw actually, on the other hand, of the games that Southern won is because of bad coaching decisions. I'm being honest. We're not going to name the coaches, but they know who they are. If they had made the correct decision at the correct time, Southern would have lost 3 more games last year. Same thing with Bubba. Bubba, that Prairie View team, if you look at Coach Jack and Bubba, it was like they were good, but you didn't see the progress. And then what happened is you can't hide certain things. You can't hide after a while. Then the truth comes out. Because what happens is consistency. When you build from the first year, that's when you move. I didn't see anything when Bubba came in from the first year and said, you know what, they're going to go back and they're going to be better next year. And I definitely didn't see anything with Southern. So what happened is what really, if they came back to the water leveled. And really what they were is what they were now, not what they were in those championship years.
Well, let me say this. I have to be fair when I say this. Dooley kind of backed into his championship, meaning, if I'm not mistaken, that's the year that Andrew Body got hurt. If I'm not, is that correct? Right. So Dooley kind of backed into his. And I'll even say to a large degree, Bubba backed into his, right? But Terrence, on the other hand, he went 7-1 in conference that year. So he didn't, and I understand the 3 games he probably should have lost, but again, my question is, had he struggled his first year, won in the same fashion his second year, would he have gotten an opportunity to go into the 3rd year of his program?
Yeah, but listen to what you're saying, Rocky. It's a through line. Then the line is going up, what you just said, not going this way. See, that's just simple. If you just put it on a board, there's progression. That's what I'm saying. You can't regress. And my point of it is when you looked at it, you didn't see. Case in point, I give you 2 perfect examples. Alabama State fired their coach. Eddie Robinson comes in. You saw a progression. T.C. Taylor comes in his first year. 75, takes it. But then the next year, they go national champ. You saw the early progression that team was getting better early in that season. Before Jackson State played FAMU, right? Because we were undefeated and the company were undefeated. But you could see Jackson State steadily every week getting better. And you saw FAMU kind of every week not getting as good. And there was a through line, and they met. And they kept going that way. We kept going the other way. So that's kind of what happens here.
I'm gonna set it up in case anybody from Southern, anybody wants to give their thoughts on this. It seems like, Coach, we're going through an awful lot, and I'll ask both of you guys because you guys are lifers in the HBCU space.
Well,
it seems like we've been going through a lot of head coaches the last 5 years.
5, maybe 15. Because I know, for instance, my school, we don't sign 6 coaches since I left in 2010. 6.
Well, Rocky, I think somebody counted. I think they said, when you asked the question last night, I think somebody counted said it was 20 coaches.
In 5 years.
Yeah, I think somebody counted that.
Yeah. Because Southern's been through 4 already in 5 years.
Texas Southern been through me, Ramsey, Ashbury. I'm looking at him in my face. Dishman, McKinney, and one more. That's 6. Or was that 7?
Well, they haven't fired Dishman, so it's 6 fired, and they've hired 6.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is,
so, Coach, that's 10 right there in a 15-year span, and that's just 2 schools.
And you have to look at Prairie View. After Willie Simmons, did they hire Eric Dooley, or was there a coach in between Eric Dooley and Willie Simmons?
I think Simmons. That's a good question. Maybe
no, Dooley was at Grambling, and there was a coach before Dooley. Because Dooley came. Well, let me see. Willie came in because they won back-to-back. 16, 17. Dooley became the coach at 18. So maybe Willie did leave. Yeah.
Because they say Simmons, right. Dooley, Bubba, and Jackson.
Yeah.
So that's 4 more. That's 18 in 3 schools.
And then UAPB has had their carousel of coaches.
Yeah. After Coleman, they've had only 3 coaches.
Coach, they've had 3 coaches since I've been watching SWAC. In 5 years, they've had 3.
Coleman stayed a long time. Coleman stayed 12 years.
And then Grambling's had 4, I believe. Well, you're talking Fobbs, Hugh Jackson, Mickey Joseph. So that's 3. That's 3. Then, of course, Alcorn has had 2. Mississippi Valley has had 3. Jackson State, believe it or not, Jackson State has had 2 during that time. You know, Coach, let me ask you guys this. Is this a historic period in the swag of coaching turnover? And what is kind of the culprit of why ADs, administrations, presidents, alumni, why they're so impatient with coaches?
Well, the question is what athletic directors are choosing the championship coaches? One told me off screen, I was speaking with some people, and they say that is it the committees who's picking the bad coaches, or is it the AD who's picking the bad coaches? I don't know, but I know this: anytime a committee gets involved in choosing the coach, 9 times out of 10 he gonna be the wrong coach.
Well, Coach, let me clear this because I had to explain this to Rocky. FAMU doesn't have a committee. That was a one-off. Every one of our coaches, the AD, has hired us. I want to clear that up. But Coach, you do know this, and let's be fair to this. There is formal committees, and then there's informal committees. Okay? There are very few, and I'm gonna put Ashley Robinson to the side because Ashley Robinson is totally like the old school. But we're talking about the Walter Reeds and guys like that had firm iron hand control, that no matter what Walter Reed said, Jackson, that's who's going to be the coach.
Yeah.
But now you have guys, and again, there are coaches that you still do check in. There are people that you still check in with now. That you say, hey, I want to bring this guy in, socialize it, because you just got to, because you got people that are sponsors, donating, and even some of the staff. But to your point, most times you don't have some official thing that FAMU went through this one time. And again, I'm not going to get too deep into that because I don't want to get off point. But overall, you still have where you say, okay, does this guy fit my program? Let me introduce him to the people that are the fundraisers, that are the supporters, right? The booster club.
Mm-hmm.
You still do that. You still get that check off. There's very few people, like I say, that are Walter Reed. Now, Ashley Robinson, I'm sure, but even with Ashley Robinson, because I'm from, and I know, he still, because he's smart and he's a consensus builder, he still talked to people about Deion. He still talked to people about Deion. He did. And he wouldn't deny that, just to make sure that was a good fit. But people were going to back him no matter what he did. So you get that. Like I say, people only grant you patience when you earn patience.
What you actually telling me to, and the way I take it and I apply it to coaches, head coaches, that's the difference between a winning head coach and a losing head coach. Is being able to stand up, when you're trying to get a certain player in the school and stuff, and you stand up and put your hat on the line or your back on the line and say, I need this guy to make this program work. That's the same thing with AD. The AD of Colorado talked about it a lot, about how he had to get Deion, the board to approve Deion, how Patino up at St. John's, if you read that story about how he had his assistants to say, go out and help me find a coach, and they brought back 20 names, and he just looked at them names and like, no, St. John's is a basketball school. We need a championship coach. And he went and got Patino and brought Patino back. And all the stuff Patino had on him, you know what I mean? So to me, it's the people who is willing to risk. The reward is bigger than the risk. Those are the guys that win. And if you look at our conference, you got to take Ashley Robinson and put him at the top. Even though I'm pretty sure he just didn't say Deion, you in. I'm pretty sure he had to go and tell people why he wanted to. You know what I mean?
And he did. And that's smart.
And that's how you to me, when you in sports like that, man, it's almost, I ain't never been in the war, so I shouldn't use that analogy. But man, you gotta believe in yourself. You gotta make a decision and live with it and point the finger at yourself and not anything else. So and a lot of times too, you got to see where we are at a program. Who do we really need as a program? You know, speaking of FAMU, of course, it ain't no job open. Let me make sure I say that. Ain't no job open. FAMU is a perennial winning program. I don't think you should be looking for, if that wants to happen, a guy to learning how to be a head coach. You know what I mean? It's different stages where your program's at that the person that you want to bring in there and get it going in the right direction.
You know, Coach, and I mentioned this to both of you guys earlier. The last 5 SWAC championships, the guy who gave those coaches their first coaching job have all been the same AD. I'll ask you guys, is that a stroke of luck by that AD, or does it display a level of competence that a lot of the other ADs don't possess?
Well, when you look at, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Bishop, I think T.C. Taylor is the only SWAC, besides Eddie Robinson, black college guy that's got a job. They came through.
Yeah, Raymond Woody, he went to Bethune though, didn't he?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he went to Bethune. I think he's a Bethune graduate.
Down at
Bethune-Cookman.
No, he a Florida State guy. The head coach of Bethune. Check it out, Coach. I think he a Florida State guy.
I think he worked at Florida State.
Okay.
Well, let's use Coach Woody as an example. He had 2 unremarkable seasons at Bethune-Cookman, and in his 3rd year, he's taken his program to a place of respectability, at least, right? Light years away from where it was, right? There were people who wanted him out last year.
He got to finish up now. He lost to some schools he should have beat last year, like Clark.
Well,
he lost to Clark.
I understand that, Coach, but he's also in his 3rd year improved his program tremendously. Now they have some shortcomings in that program as well, but from where they were, 3 years ago to where they are now, I think they're considerably more respectable, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, this is Raymond Woody's last year on that contract. So it didn't, and you guys saying this is Bethune-Cookman. Bethune-Cookman does not have money to fire people. So he was going to play this contract out no matter what. No matter what. So what has happened is he's got the guy. But see, this is the funny thing about it. He's got the back end of this schedule. That he's got to finish it out. Do I think they're going to keep him based off of where the schedule kind of plays out? I think he'll get another contract. But I tell you what, if he goes 0 for the rest of the season, then what?
Gentleman B. Field says, can we discuss on these ADs? I don't agree with Rocky's perspective. My perspective is only that Ashley Robinson has hired the last 5 championships have been won by coaches that he gave their first start as a head coach. That's a fact. He hired Deion Sanders, 2-time SWAC champion. He hired Willie Simmons, won a SWAC championship 2 years ago. And he hired T.C. Taylor a couple years ago, already won a SWAC championship and a national championship. All those men were given their first coaching gigs by Ashley Robinson.
And all of them was a chance, was a shot, except for Willie Simmons. He didn't know Deion would win and really didn't feel comfortable about T.C. Taylor. And that was his last job. Because remember, now T.C. Taylor went from the tight end coach to the offensive coordinator back to the tight end coach. So he did take a chance on that.
But see, this is the thing. I'm going to say, some people call it chance. I call it insight. And this is the thing about when you have insight, when you see something in somebody, because you got to understand something. Him and Coach O were the only people that were left over from the previous staff, Coach. So already Ashley Robinson said, I see this guy that's a JSU true blue guy that I think, because everybody knew Deion was not staying, it was either going to be 2 years or 4 years. That was the max. 4 years was the max for Deion, no matter what. Everybody knew that. So it wasn't no secret. So, but he was already making sure that this young brother was already in-house and he saw something. It's the same thing with Willie. He saw something.
Yeah, and you know, TC Taylor, he knew where the restroom was. Being an all-star there as well, being alumnus there helped as well, you know, and being the guy who he is, all that was a perfect fit. So that's a little difference of bringing somebody from the outside who's learning, you know, sitting in that seat for the first time. You know, that's tough.
Now this gentleman brings up
if you go back and look at Jackson State, and if you go back and look at Jackson State's years from when I was in school, W.C. Gordon, then it was Coach Carson, then it was Coach Hughes. They all won. They won all the way up to the 2000s. Then they hired Coach Bell. They fell off. Then they hired Jackson. They fell off. Then they hired a guy from Mississippi. Then they hired Comegy, and then they started coming back up. So it's almost like when you hire guys in those type of programs that knows this conference, that's been around, they become successful. It's the ones that come from the outside.
Well, you know, again, my deal, Coach Cole, is, and I'll let you guys discuss this, is that people in the chat are sharing my sentiments. Why aren't the ADs held accountable for these hires that they're making? Some making multiple hires. Some hiring guys that, you know, may not have the experience. Why aren't ADs held accountable for these coaching failures?
Well, let me say this, and I want the Southern people to correct me if I'm wrong, because we got a lot of Southern people in here. Football ain't the only sport; it's the driver. Because correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Southern has won female basketball championships, SWAC baseball championships on this man. I think a men's basketball championship. So there are other things. And again, I don't know about the fundraising. You guys know better than that. I don't know what kind of fundraiser he is that. So sometimes you get a pass. And mind you, with that being said, Southern every other year has won the West. So it's not been Southern has been down, 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 down. It's been the inconsistency of the up and down. So that's what I'm saying for Roman Banks. So maybe when you look at the totality, I looked at, and I saw Southern kind of have the same setup as Florida. Well, Louisiana, they have a board of supervisors or thing I looked at, and the governor puts those in. And I'm pretty sure they might have looked at it and said, hey, overall, and I'm pretty sure Southern, I think, has a pretty good APR. Because Rocky, that means a lot too, as we know. So if you got the APR, you're winning championships, you're in that Commissioner's Cup race, and the whole thing is kind of not at the Southern level. They went soccer, bowling. So there you go, haven't won football. And then you're raising money. You kind of like, hey, that's why. It's overall what happened with Tiffany, where you got $1 million deficit, your credit card get cut off, and you really didn't hire none of these coaches to win a championship, then they let you go. That's the difference.
Well, okay. So I think to put Tiffany in this category, I think is a bit unfair for this regard. If it wasn't for Tiffany was collateral damage due to the $27 million donation that happened. She was collateral damage in that.
You think so?
Yes, that's what I believe. I believe
I tell you that ain't had nothing to do with it.
To me,
say it was full faith and confidence because I know.
No, well, what I'm saying is, I believe if Dr. Robinson is still at the helm at FAMU, Tiffany's still at Florida A&M.
Okay, I can tell you. Well, we can move on. We don't want to get the ball.
No. I'm just saying you don't believe that's true.
What I'm saying, when you have $1 million deficit, that ain't gonna have you there. And that's what I'm saying about Roman Banks and the Ashley Robinsons and the AD Bryants and the AD Golfs. People don't understand. Hiring a coach is not the only thing ADs do. And let me tell you something. Rocky, me and Coach talked about this. Let me roll back something about an AD and the old school ADs. And Coach Cole, I don't understand it. Most of the ADs back in the old school, Coach, and you know this, and most of the great football coaches, basketball, you know what they were? Their majors were education. They were teachers by nature. So you know what happened? They were trained to be teachers. You know what being a teacher also trains you to do? Actually help you coach. Because, Coach, what is coaching? Is coaching not teaching?
Oh, yeah.
So now, Rocky, what you've had is when you had these guys, they were able to, most of these old school ADs actually played the sport. They played, but Roman Banks played basketball for Southern, if I'm correct.
I was gonna say most of them were football coaches.
Football,
I mean, let's face it. I mean, football is the face of all most athletes.
Hold on. I'm gonna bring you in because I want to explain this to Rocky. So when you had that, there was an understanding of what needed to be done from an athletic side. Okay, this is before the NCAA. Really, now all these ADs now, because of the level, and I'm talking about the red tape of rules that was not 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that you have to deal with. The biggest thing AD has to worry about, and Rocky, I showed you the staff. Majority of the staff had nothing to do with athletics. It had to do all with compliance, did it not? That's what has changed in the AD world. So when you go now, you're not looking for a guy that will be able to have the insight. Ashley Robinson, I believe, played basketball for Valley.
Yeah,
so he understands the mentality. So if you got a guy, it's very few guys like that. Because the other schools are saying, we got all this red tape. We need to hire somebody that understands compliance and fundraising and this and APR and all that. And a lot of that, they have no clue about athletics. And what you're seeing is, and when the athletic part comes at the forefront, they fail.
Hey, Coach, I wanted to step in here right quick and thank everybody for viewing this stream on the Off Script channel. We're about to suspend the stream on the Off Script channel, and you can always switch over and view it on the home of the HBCU Coaches Corner on the Rocky Miller channel. Thank you guys very much for viewing. I'll give you a minute to go ahead and switch over. Type 1 once you switched over, and I'll go ahead and suspend the stream on the Off Script channel. Thank you guys very much. Go ahead, Coach. We were talking. You were discussing that most of the old coaches were most of the older ADs were coaches, and that you mentioned that Ashley Robinson was also a athlete,
correct,
turned administrator. And is that some type of differential advantage you guys are trying to?
Well, I think so. And that's why now, Coach, I'm going to pass it to you. And that's what the setup is. Coach, why is that so important when you have a guy in that top seat that actually understands the athletic part? Because what does he do for you, Coach? If you got an AD that understands, say, like I said, a former football coach, and he hires you, how does that help you because he's the AD?
Well, the first because he's been in the